Welcome to Just a Farm Wife with your host, Tara Emerson. Tara is a farm wife, photographer, mom, author, public speaker, and much more. On this podcast, Tara takes listeners on a journey through all aspects of life and how we can create future growth. This podcast helps to empower women to believe they are more than the labeling that society hands them. And remember, you are never just in anything.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Just a Farm Wife. I am your host, Tara Emerson, and today we have Katie Poterala. She is a functional medicine practitioner, and I'm so excited to talk to her. Are you currently a jewelry designer as well?
So I have been a jewelry designer for going on 20 years, and the functional medicine piece was kind of an accidental thing that happened to me. So I still do both. So I still have and operate a jewelry studio where I make like one-of-a-kind artistic pieces, but I also have a second business where I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which is where the functional medicine stuff comes in.
Okay, I love this. I love how it happened to me.
Yeah, yeah, it was not planned. It was just, as you've probably heard the story before, it's sort of how that space.
Right. But it's great. It's your intuition leading you to somewhere where you didn't know that you needed to be, but here you are following the dream and following where your heart takes you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Where your life takes you.
Yep.
So our series is on autoimmune, but I'd like to touch base on your story on how you got into this space, because mold is a big thing and there's some information. There's becoming more information available, but I feel like it's so important to understand people's specific stories and how they overcame mold and those sorts of things, because it happens quickly. And then it takes a lot of years to undo.
It does. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So mold is really the catalyst of what made me end up becoming a functional practitioner. You might have already guessed. So I was in a commercial lease in a jewelry studio, a fantastic space in a downtown location. We opened right when COVID was about to hit. So terrible timing, but we made it. We were fine there. Things worked out. It was thriving business, but unfortunately it was a moldy space and I did not know that. So fast forward about 2 years into that space, I started getting really, really sick. I was sinus infections, but awful ones. You just wouldn't believe. It was struggling at work, struggling at home, crazy fatigue. I would get, trembling, neuropathy in hands and feet, so bad that I would struggle to work at the bench sometimes, and just this overwhelming inability to get better. I got pregnant in this space at the same time too, so there were a lot of stresses happening at once. Yeah. So we had COVID, we had all the business craziness of COVID. We had the mold, the pregnancy. The pregnancy was very, very difficult. Everything was harder than it should be. Hashimoto's all of a sudden came back when I'd had it in remission for 6 or 7 years prior. I was in the best health of my life in going into this space, right? It was the perfect time in a lot of ways. So I just kept getting worse. All the traditional antibiotics and things were making it worse, better. I was getting the runarounds. I had, just 5 or 6 doctors kind of on call all the time. So there was the ENT and the allergist. So I had these full on head to toe body rashes that were horrible, multiple biopsies, no answers. I know now that was a mast cell reaction, but at the time had no idea what was happening, and just literally looked around one day because I'd already been living non-toxic for years, no chemicals, nothing to blame, no product changes. And I just saw on the HVAC and went, I wonder if that's a thing. And it was, and that's what started the whole going down the rabbit hole. I eventually found a podcast with doctors talking about mold and went, okay, the gaslighting can stop now. This is a thing. You just have to find the right people, right? And the right conversation. conversations. So fortunately, podcasts are around now. To them before. So now I'm like a huge believer, obviously. So it's like, it's sort of like Pinterest with images. It's like you find one podcast, and all of a sudden you find another and find another and find another. So I ended up finding someone through podcasts who sounded like the expert to work with. And that helped me kind of attempt to outrun the train, if you will, of like still being in the space and breathing it in while I was trying to figure out how to get out of the space as the next step. So we were testing, I was testing the space, trying to talk to the landlord. And that could be a whole conversation just on its own, but basically was able to, find the mold in the body in those lab reports, match it up to the space. We know this is the problem, and then just strategically try to figure out how to get out of the space, which was, the main, most important thing to do while I was doing a lot on the health side to kind of deal with what I had already accumulated in the body. So I made, some progress there, and I ended up with another local doctor too, who actually was mold aware, kind of accidentally. So cool. I made a certain amount of progress there, but I did not fully heal. So I had already, as I was going down the rabbit hole, I'd already been slowly looking for like 2 years for, if I wanted to learn more about this, what would I do? Where would I go? So I had been looking at programs. I'd looked at a couple master's degrees in nutrition, where I would just get a second master's, and nothing clicked until I found, I kid you not, in a week, 3 different people, 2 years into this search, recommended functional diagnostic nutrition. And it couldn't have been more perfect because it taught the labs and it gave access to the labs, which was kind of like would have been the end of a 3-step goal had I done a master's in nutrition and sort of fleshed that route out. So it was after it allowed me to put all the missing pieces together and see some of the shortcomings and sort of trip ups that we had made with other practitioners. And that's really what got me back to normal was, I kind of took what we did there, took what was missing, and I had to redo some of the work. Like I had to redo some of the gut work because we did it, frankly, in the wrong order. Finally, as you said, it's a long process. It's been, 7 years now, and I'm finally pretty much back to normal. And not everybody is that difficult. I was super complex. I have Lyme also. I have all the things, all the downstream stuff. Yeah. So some people feel better when they get out of the space with just a few interventions. That was not me. I was kind of most complex, case possible in a way. So it has taken a while, and that is the story, unfortunately, for some people. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine doing all that, like getting pregnant in that. I mean, your body was just.
It was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a miracle, and he was sick too. Unfortunately, he spent the first 3 months of his life over there with me. Actually, I take that back. I took 2 months off, did not get to take the third, brought him back, and then he was there with me month 3 through like month 6, a couple days a week in that space with me too. So unfortunately, I think back, and it's like tragic that his little pack and play was right under that HVAC that I eventually saw the mold on. So he, as a result, was just very, very sickly for several years. We ended up pulling him out of daycare while we were trying to work on him and boost his immune system. And now he's great. He's fine, but it certainly affected him too as a baby.
Sure. Yeah, and especially when they're developing, like I would imagine that is a challenge to get rid of.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky for him. One of the problems we had is there's so many bugs at daycare. His immune system was not able to fight anything. So it was like we ended up in this position where he was sick all the time. And it wasn't directly mold making him sick. It was the fact that mold knocked his system down so low that every little thing, he just couldn't kick things. And then neither could I. So we were just this endless cycle of just sick all the time.
Oh, that is so hard.
But it couldn't be more different. We eventually were able to send him back. He rarely gets sick now. I mean, these things are all fixable, which is a good takeaway for anybody listening.
That is a good takeaway. We like to say that on this podcast. I probably sound ridiculous. I say this whenever I talk to anyone, is that we if you're listening to this podcast, you are not the person who is going to accept this is your new normal for an answer. This is just how your life is going to be. Like,
Right.
That's just not an acceptable answer to me.
It's not to me either. No, it's
there's always a way to get better. There's always a way to change the situation. There's always a way. You just have to find the right people and, like you said, the right conversations, the right podcasts. And I really hope that this podcast is a light for someone who's suffering in silence and really doesn't understand what their body's going through. That's why I really wanted to talk about and do like this autoimmune series. And it's all kind of interrelated. And especially for women, women aren't as represented in the health space. It's usually women who are seeking the alternative medicine because there isn't really a safe space for them in Western medicine, where somebody listens, where somebody understands and says, hey, let's try to work on this.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, there's a lot of problems with the system, right? But one of them being a huge one is if someone only gets 7 to 15 minutes with you, what kind of deep dive are they going to do? You're lucky if they've glanced at your labs before you walk in the room. But there's not, a huge component of what I do, and the way that I was trained is to clinically correlate. So we correlate back to your life, to your medical history, all the things we know about that make you you. We get into the weeds. We want to know like what you're cooking with and what kind of, stuff is in your kitchen and what your exposure are, what your toxin load looks like. We want to know about the surgeries you've had. Do you have tattoos? I mean, we really get into all this, but you can't do that in 15 minutes. It's just a whole different construct of working, and we want to look at every part of the body, every system in the body. We want to look at how they're working together, because in my opinion, you really just can't get to root cause unless you look at everything, because I've done it. Like I did it with multiple people and it failed me, and it fails a lot of people all the time. But also that lack of clinical correlation back to who you are, because everything about you is different than the person next to you. And that gets missed when people just look at labs and they just look at numbers, and they're basically, treating the paper, if you will, instead of treating the person, or working with the person. It's just hard to get great results without that approach, in my opinion, and in my experience.
Right. Well, and I like to think that you have to treat the whole person, the mind, the body, and the spirit. Like it's all interconnected. So just because some lab result is wonky, well, yes, you can fix that to a certain degree. You can fix that symptom, but where is it stemming from?
Right. And there's always
we fix that
cause.
Totally.
That's the thing. There's a lot of people out there looking for one root cause, and like I hate to rain on people's parade, but it's never one thing. It isn't. Like I've never seen it.
Yes.
It's like people want to be like, yes, we found the thing, but it's never just that one thing, which is why it either reverts, people get better for a little bit and then they go downhill again. It's an incomplete picture. It always is. But there is always a reason, or multiple reasons.
Right. Exactly. That's so true. And I feel like that's kind of just a male linear way of thinking.
It is.
It's nothing wrong with being male. It's just that's just how they think. I'm going through some health stuff right now, and that's what my husband said. He's like, well, but what did they pinpoint? What exactly is wrong with you? I'm like, well, yes and no.
It's difficult. I mean, it's difficult work. It really is. I mean, it's like flushing out what's happening, under the surface, because it isn't just one thing. I mean, you really have to spend time, again, back to time, where people don't have the time with somebody.
Right.
You can pinpoint certain things. I mean, in the day to day, we pinpoint lots of things, but it's still never one thing. It's like,
Right.
Here are the 3 things wrong in your gut right now. And here's how they talk to the liver. And here's how we know. There's a lot of deduction. But if you're not looking again at the bigger picture, it's easy to just say, oh, here's the 3 things in the gut. Let's just knock those out real quick. But we've ignored cortisol, and we've ignored what your hormones are doing, and we've ignored your adrenal. Then you crash, which
Right.
has also happened to me. And those gut infections, they don't clear because suddenly you have no capacity. So you're back to square one. So it's trickier than we make it out to be.
Right, for sure.
Because we want the quick pill for everything and the quick fix, which is just
right.
not the way to get to the bottom of things.
Right. Right. Well, oh goodness.
It's probably my fault. I try not to go too far out on tangents.
No, I mean, this is good. But you're right. That you do have to focus on all of the things. Oh, that's what I was going to say. When you crash afterwards, when things start to get better and then you crash afterwards, like there's a psychological component to that too. Like it really like knocks you down, like in your confidence level kind of who you are. When that happens, because you're just like, oh, my body should be performing, my body should do this. And it's like, well, your body is telling you something different. Your body is telling you need to rest, or your body is telling you that you need something different. And it's just important for us to listen.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing people don't realize is so much is interconnected, right? So in that crash that you're talking about, a lot of times when the body's been under stress, for a long time, it runs out your reserves. So there's multiple components. Like part of even this mental part is one, not understanding your body isn't working against you. It's doing what it was designed to do, to reserve, but 2, in that stress state, you burn through everything. You burn through all your minerals, which are very, very foundational. So if your body doesn't have, think of them like raw resources, right? If it doesn't have that to run on, you're not making the neurotransmitters you should be. The dopamine, serotonin, all those feel-good hormones, your body's in stress mode. It's prioritizing cortisol and survival. It's not worried about hormones. Those can be huge mood changers too. It's like all of these systems are working together, and it's complex. But you're absolutely right. And there's a nervous system component to that too, and needing to regulate and shift.
Yes. And I want to talk about the mineral part. Because we live in the north, where we don't have a whole lot of sunlight. And they say that like North Dakotans, Minnesotans, South Dakotans, probably Montanians as well. They're all vitamin D deficient. Just because it's dark so many hours of the day and you're not going outside when it's minus 40.
Yep. I don't blame you.
So for one, our body is chronically stressed just from that. And it's nothing that you're doing wrong. It is just, it's where you live. So your body is chronically stressed about that. And then when you get stuck in that low vitamin D, and then you have work stress and family stress and all that on top of it, your body starts spiraling downward because it doesn't know what to do without all that vitamin D. Like, part of my issues were I would get a shot of 100,000 units of vitamin D, and in 2 weeks, it was completely gone. I would burn through it so fast. But that's what happens when you're in stress and that sort of thing.
Well, and another thing that happens is all your minerals need to be in specific ratios to each other too. So sometimes what will happen, the same thing happens with iron. There are people that get iron infusions and it's just like it never happened. It's just gone. And people get really confused by that, but they're actually, sometimes when you start to rebalance someone's minerals, which is one of the most basic, foundational, to be honest, one of the cheapest things we can do in the functional space, all of a sudden the body is able to hold on to that again because it was burning it because something else was out of balance. And it can be a whole bunch of different things depending on what exactly is going on in any one individual. But when you were talking about that, I think of iron immediately because you see that, I would say, probably more often where a similar thing can happen. But you're right, you're in a disadvantage based on where you live. So it starts to become about strategy. What can you do? I'm not opposed to those lights. I don't know if you have a light. There's a couple brands of the daylight lights that are specifically for that, which is not the same as red light. Sometimes I find people get confused with red light and think that they're getting the same vitamin D benefit, but they're not.
Oh, sure.
It has other benefits.
Right.
But, I'm sure you're already fully aware that, your body requires sunlight for the message to produce hormones too, other hormones, not just vitamin D. So I tell people, if you can open a sunroof for a few minutes and let your eyes on the way to work, can you open a little window? Because yeah. And it's like, open a little window in your bathroom when you're getting ready, and just kind of cross at, get it partway in your vision because it's not going to bring a ton of cold air in. So you just have to be really strategic. I mean, I get nowhere near that cold here. Obviously, snow is rare for us, but even in the chilly winter, it's like I try to make a point. I can't do it every morning, but it's like I go out there all bundled up and put a jacket on and put blankets on and just go out there and go, okay, 10-minute timer. I'm going to get this 10 minutes of morning sun because I know the science, and I know what it does for me. So there's always a way to strategize to try to get more of that. But I would suspect that maybe some other mineral imbalance is at play, because it typically is if you're not holding on to it at all, because we do have needs, but to get an injection like that and not have it hold, I would suspect there's some other reason.
Yeah.
Potentially. Like I said, there's always more.
There's always
one
more.
reason.
Yes, totally.
You have to be a detective.
So where would you look at? Where would you start looking then if you're not
at mineral?
So is there a specific blood test?
Yeah.
For minerals?
Yeah. So I would not do a blood test for most. So for blood, it's great for iron. But for all of the other minerals, blood is going to give you, basically, it's going to give you a window of what's happening right now. But the blood has to stay homeostatic. So the blood is always going to pull from other places, other tissues, so that it stays as perfectly balanced as possible, right?
Sure.
So what that means is it's not always the best window because it's always trying to balance on the fly, basically, to keep you alive. It has to. Where functional people are going to look for a better tissue sample is a hair analysis. So it's called an HTMA. It's a hair tissue mineral analysis. There's two good labs for that. There's a lot of other ones I wouldn't bother with, but you really want somebody trained in it as well because it's not a surface level test. There's a lot of reading between the lines as opposed to just get the test, oh, it's high or low. It's not that simple. But it's going to take a tissue level because your body is always getting rid of these things. But it's also going to give us some heavy metal information too, which is kind of interesting. But that's the one that I do, and that's the one I recommend. And pretty much everybody I know uses that test.
Okay.
And that's going to be a more accurate 3-month window as opposed to your blood is just, the last 30 minutes to an hour of what's happening that day.
Sure.
So if you see imbalances there, oh, this is a 3-month imbalance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really interesting test.
Okay. Yeah. I've had someone on the show before who does hair analysis. Her focus is the epigenetics.
Okay. Yeah.
That's part of it. But yes.
That's a very interesting rabbit hole too. I haven't gone too far down. Epigenetics, sure, everything we do in our lifestyle, we're influencing them. But I have not, personally, I have not gone down all the genetic. I may eventually. There's like a million places you can go.
Well, because it is interesting.
Yeah, it is.
It is really interesting, and the information that you can get from it. So, and I want to say she uses the information from the hair sample for this type of similar analysis as well. But that makes sense. And when I went to my functional medicine doctor, like we've only done blood work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an FDN, so we're doing all the non-blood things,
Yeah.
I may eventually get into a little more blood and the functional panels. And if people have existing blood, we can add it into the mix. But for most things, it's not going to capture what I'm looking for.
Sure.
We're looking at saliva, we're looking at stool, we're looking at hair, we're looking at things that are going to give us the best picture in that particular area, which most of the time is not blood. Sometimes with mold, there are blood markers for sears for, the chronic immune response that can be very helpful. But again, I don't even use it on everybody. It just depends on their individual circumstance, because other people, another test may be better suited to them. There's just so many variables. So it has its place. It just gives you a different type of information too. For minerals, I want that 3-month view, and I want to know what they're doing at the tissue level versus what's happening at the blood level.
That's fascinating. I would not have thought of that. And I was gonna say I don't think most people have thought to test their hair.
Well, let me tell you an interesting story. So the HTMA, I've done that training outside of FDN actually, and I'll tell you why. So when I was in college, when I first got diagnosed with Hashimoto's years and years and years ago, I had a functional medicine doctor. She pretty much turned my health around. I mean, I was in a bad place. I was like sleeping in between classes. I was so non-functional. This was like the first health crisis that I almost don't even bring up anymore, because it's like we could talk all day about the mold thing, right? She used HTMA, and she did a small amount of blood work, but pretty much everything she did was based on this HTMA. And I went from like non-functional to within 3 months, totally different person. And I think back and I'm like, oh my God, 3 months, like looking at what she did.
3 months is a very short amount of time.
It is. It was kind of miraculous, and I didn't know it at the time, right? So, even once I completed my training, that was top of the list for me, because I remember what it did for me, and because I understand that that's the most foundational thing that you can do. So, when I work with people now, it's always a part of the picture, but it's kind of the starting point. So like sometimes I'll have people that just want to start there and just see what happens just with that. And they maybe roll into a different, the full program later if they need it, but not everybody needs it. I personally value it as much as, that annual blood work you get done, get your annual HTMA too, because it was life-changing. So I made it a point to add that onto my training immediately, even though I can do a lot of good with people without it. I don't want to. I want to add it in, because it's just gonna, all of the other stuff only sticks so well if you have the resources. And if you don't have the resources, it's what everything's built on. So I think it's truly foundational. But yeah, that was kind of my initial, experience with it, was personal. And I, obviously still remember that from, gosh, I don't know, 05, 06 or something, when when we originally did that.
And it's now your Hashimoto's is good? It's gone?
It's not gone. So I had gotten fully into remission off all medications before the moldy space. So ever since, it got very bad during pregnancy.
That makes sense.
That could be a whole whole other conversation. But anyway, so I did go back on medication then, and I'm just now to the point where hopefully can potentially start weaning off. But antibodies are coming down more so, I would say, in the last year, comparing, different labs. It just held steady in the mold, and until I got out of that, then we started dropping slowly, inflammation's coming down. But, it's a lot on the body with the immune system and what happens in mold. So it's been a slow go of it, but finally they just keep coming down and keep coming down. So
that's good.
Hopefully I would like to be off medication and in remission again one day. So we're working towards that. It's just never going as fast as we want it to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So how often do you have people repeat this HTMA test?
Usually we'll do it, and then we won't repeat it for 3 months. So 3 months would be the soonest, 3 to 4. If people don't have a lot of complaints and they're in a maintenance phase now, like we've brought things back in balance, I would say once every 6 months, once a year, just to maintain and make sure that things are where they need to be. But when you're actively balancing, somebody's in what we call like a 4-low pattern, where everything is just very, very low. You want to monitor because we're adding inputs, right, to try to balance. So you want to monitor every 3 or 4 months, but I wouldn't do it any sooner because you're not going to see changes that fast. You might see symptom shifts a lot of the times, like people start feeling better, but it's not going to show up in the data until at least 3 or 4 months later.
Sure.
And you may have to tweak protocols too. You know, if one thing came into balance very quickly and others didn't, you may make shifts in the protocols as well.
Sure. Well, and you don't have to have like a full-blown autoimmune disease to start taking a look at this. Like you can be at the point kind of where honestly, probably the point where I'm at, where like I had chronic stress for 6 years, and then, you know, all that stress kind of just left all at once. And then my body was like, whoa. Resting, but now we don't know where to go.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, the stress burns all that out, especially those big four, you know, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Those are the main four we need for like just thousands of reactions in the body. They're the ones that get hit because you're on overdrive and you're just using and using and using. And unfortunately, I could go on all day about how we ended up here, but our food doesn't have in it what it had in it 2 generations ago. Our soil sucks now. So we're not eating them, even when we're eating clean and organic. You know, local's better if it's closer to the source and just came out of ground. But even when we're doing all the right things, you'd be shocked how many people are just super depleted. I do not believe food is enough anymore, unfortunately, for most people, because the quality of our food is just not what it used to be. You know, it's like they say, like the tomato your grandmother ate and your tomato couldn't be any more different. And they're bred for different reasons. They're bred for size and to be pretty in the supermarket. They're not bred for nutrient quality, and the soil just doesn't have it anymore. So whole other topic for another day, but
that is a whole other topic.
We're all there.
I'm a farmer.
Are you? Okay.
But we're in the Red River Valley, so we have some of the richest soil.
You have good soil still.
Yeah.
So you're aware of all the statistics and where they say we're headed in 20 years or 30 years.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yes.
Soil quality. So your food is probably more nutrient rich than, you know,
right.
90% of who's listening to you right now.
Right. Yes, most definitely. And we, you know, just like anywhere, there's different types of farmers, but there's some farmers that really do a great job about putting back into the soil and making, you know, using regenerative processes. And there are some farmers that just don't.
Yeah.
And then there's some and they don't put back in, and they let the topsoil blow, and they, you know, there's both, you know. We really got to figure out how to come together to keep our soil rich. And we do a lot of regenerative processes. Like our soil, like when we first started farming, I mean, we started farming like 20 years ago, but when we first started farming, like the organic matter and that sort of thing in the soil was pretty low, and now it's like over quadruple what it was before. So
you've seen the change. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch that data as well, you know.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I think we have the answer. You know, we know we have the answer. It's just a matter of implementing it and at a large scale and convincing some of these larger corporations that care about other things instead of that, that it's going to be necessary to even, you know, you'd think that they would care more just because they're going to eventually need it too, or else they're not going to be able to keep producing, you know?
Right.
So we could talk all day about that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I
wish we could get it all from food. And I mean, that is one thing. It's like, we don't do everything with supplements. It's like, you know, we'll have conversations with people where it's like, okay, you need to eat this many Brazil nuts every day, you know, and like, here's a list of the top 5 foods that have this one specific nutrient. Can we try to incorporate them a few times a week? So, you know, sometimes it's that simple as, you know, people just are like, oh, I never eat that. Well, so now you can start. Like, put a little bit on your
Right.
salad, you know?
Right. Well, and you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, so oftentimes we're just guessing as
Yeah.
to what to eat, or, you know, you heard something somewhere that says, "Oh, this is good for you," and
Right. Right. And
you
it's
know,
all conflicting too, so it's confusing.
yeah, yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
you know,
But if
eggs
you
are good one
know,
week and they're terrible for you the next. It's hard to
right,
know what to do.
right, exactly. And everybody's body is different, so that's really cool that
True.
that test is so specific.
Yes.
It shows you what you need specifically,
Yeah.
because what I need is going to be different. What
It will. It will. And even if you look at your whole household, it's like, you know, I mean, literally my own, right? Like we just did my husband's. I haven't done our 4-year-old yet. I kind of just am interested. I think I'm gonna do it. He doesn't really have any complaints. It's like, but when you have access, and I'm just like very nerdy and like the data, you know,
yeah, yeah,
I kind
yeah,
of just want to know. But I mean, my and my husband's dramatically different. We eat the same foods. We live in the same house. We drink the same water. Even exposures. I mean, it's like he had high arsenic. Where does that
oh,
arsenic come from?
yeah,
So,
for
you know, it's
sure.
like it's not in our RO water. We've had great water forever. So it's
Yeah,
even down to that, it's like I know I'm not being exposed because of my test results. Meanwhile, I
right.
have high copper. He doesn't have high copper. So, you know, even in the same household, same food, same water, you know, there's still differences between people. And some of that could be hereditary and literally passed down.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I was just thinking the same thing. I was like,
yeah.
oh, this is where the epigenetics would come in.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's an
That,
argument. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
people, there are actually people too, even when we go back to bring it full circle to mold. You know, the practitioner I worked with said he had tested daughter, mother, grandmother, and saw the same mold through all of them, but none of them could remember a home that they knew had an issue. So
Oh,
some of the
fascinating.
toxins, you know, can pass that way too. Heavy metals are another toxin. So could be some other environmental exposure, something, you know, he was doing some, I think we sort of narrowed, he was doing some sort of DIY renovation stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I tracked it down to some like drywall in the 90s that has a lot of arsenic in it. It came from China. Still in houses. It can't be sold here anymore legally, but it's still around, you know, and there's still old stock here. So it could be something as, you know, as simple as that, is that, you know, so anyway, I'd say everybody is different even in the same household.
Right.
You know, and it
That's,
may matter what your parents' exposures were.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that is such good information. But like, even like I've read before too, like that even color blindness isn't necessarily a genetic trait. It's heavy metal toxicity passed down. It's not necessarily genetic.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that conversation, but I wouldn't discard it. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't, you know, it's fascinating some of the things that happen when you have these toxins in the mix. I mean, you look at data where it's like we find DDT still in babies. Where does that come from? You know, they
Yeah.
come out of the, you know, the placenta and the umbilical cord have all these toxins in it, you know, so it's very hard to argue these days that that can't happen when we test it in umbilical cord blood and find these things that have, in
Right.
that case, have been outlawed for a while now,
Right.
since I believe the 70s. So, you know, these things stay, unfortunately.
Yes, they do. Yes. My grandparents sprayed DDT.
They
Yeah.
didn't know.
They didn't know. No. And that was the thing. That's what they were paid to do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't imagine their exposure.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I mean, we have a habit of bringing things to market and not asking if anything's wrong with it until many years later, unfortunately.
Right.
So now
Right.
we're all dealing with the toxic soup that we live in as a result.
Right. Right. So I know this is kind of not related, but as what are your, it's, I guess it's not related and not related, like peptides, you know,
Yeah.
that is the new thing that's
Yep.
being pushed through, but some are studied, some are not, you know, and then people are injecting them wildly, or and don't really necessarily have a strategy, I feel like.
Yeah, you're right. I am not opposed to them in the right circumstances. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are probably using stuff they don't really need, and they're kind of like hopping on the biohacking bandwagon to a degree. However, I have used them personally. I've seen huge reductions in thyroid antibodies almost overnight. That stuck. They stayed with it only to 3 months. A year later, it stayed. I've seen huge inflammation differences too. With specific markers. So like I like the data, right? So like I'm going to follow this stuff and see what actually happens on paper too. I am not a huge fan of the full dose GLPs. I prefer a microdose. I think that there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong with the full doses, one of which being people don't want to eat. I think it's great for people that really need a weight loss reduction and to get their insulin in check. It can be a tool, but I don't think that people should have to stay on them forever. I think that they need the lifestyle and the diet and the exercise information from day one, or else it's just a Band-Aid. And then there may be other side effects that are unwanted that come out of that. And then it's a crutch. You're just on it forever.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that we should be on anything forever.
Agree.
I think
agree.
that yes, our body needs support at different times, and sometimes our bodies need time to break whatever cycle that they're in, and they need that extra support for that. But if you're going to be on something for 20 years, like that just cannot.
That's just the same Band-Aid approach. Yeah. I agree. So like where I like to see them is kind of like the icing on the cake. Somebody's already doing all the other things. They've got the lifestyle nailed down. They've got the diet nailed down. We're doing root cause work. And then it may come in as like, man, this peptide really might kick it up a notch for you right now. Or like, try this one for 3 months, see what happens. But it's not a forever thing.
Right.
So there's a lot of people.
One thing I do like about peptides is that it is definitely a cyclical thing. You're not on it forever.
Yeah. And I think
except for the GLP. I don't know a whole lot about the GLP thing.
Well, and the microdoses, there are a lot of other benefits from them in a microdose too, for insulin, getting insulin back on track too. I'm not opposed to that. Again, I don't know if people really need it forever either. There are some small weight loss implications for some people. Not everybody experiences weight loss on a low dose, but for somebody, particularly like a mold case where they are perfect, clean lifestyle, like everything's dialed in, you've done all the other work, but the weight loss still won't come. Your fat could be toxic. Maybe that's where all those toxins still are being packed in there because you store toxins in fat.
Sure.
In which case, I would not want them personally. I would, proceed with caution if you're going to look at a full dose GLP after mold, because the last thing I would want is them to release all of those toxins, force the body to do it, and then overwhelm the detox capacity. So that would be where the microdose would be more strategic. And like take a micro of a micro, because you can actually titrate down from the traditional micro too. So they have their place. Some of the inflammation ones are really interesting to me. Have seen good results with clients too. I personally have a hesitation when it comes to the GHK a little bit. And that's just because I have a personal history with copper overload. And a lot of HTMA practitioners will see copper toxicity or high levels of copper in people already. So then theoretically, with the GHK, you're actually adding in copper. So I would hesitate a little bit with that if we don't know what their mineral status looks like and we don't know what their copper status looks like. And that's a huge one that everybody's just running out and buying. It's in all these topicals now too, face creams, but if somebody had a lot of copper already, I wouldn't want them to add more copper. But I wouldn't want them drinking out of a copper water bottle either in that circumstance.
Right.
So
right.
It's just everybody's different.
But if you have too much copper already, then you would think that you wouldn't even see results then if you were using more copper on top of that.
Well, so think about a cream. It would be acting locally. So it would be acting locally in the skin. So you could still theoretically see some benefits from it. Does that copper added topically really go beyond and become systemic? I'm not sure that we know that yet, but I like to proceed with like abundance of caution, where, I don't want you adding more if we think you've got too much already, balance that, get rid of, come up with strategies to get rid of the amount that you have. And then sure, if you want to use the face cream, go use the face cream or inject it, So I think you could actually see both because, that would be acting topically.
Sure. My son did the injectable.
Yeah.
And it cleared his skin up just
Did
like
it?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are saying, and I've known, I know people that have tried it and seen nothing. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I don't think peptides are going anywhere. I think there are a lot of people right now. Yeah, I think we're just going to keep seeing more of them. And I think they're cool tools. I do like that they're just chains of amino acids. That to me feels very different than a lot of synthetic medications. Yes, they're still made in a lab. Yes, they're altered somewhat, but they feel, I don't know if I'll say full on natural, but they feel more natural than a lot of other interventions we've had that I've grown up with,
Yeah.
And they're teaching the body or signaling the body to do something instead of masking something or hiding something or blocking where something else would park itself, So it's very interesting to me. But I do think a lot of people are just blowing money on them, not really knowing if they need them, if they need this one, if they need that one, because they're just kind of willy-nilly just stacking, if you will.
Sure. Wow. Yeah, that's true. So if someone was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder or is just feeling the worst and just cannot figure it out, what would you suggest the first thing that they do?
I would find a good practitioner that's going to look at more than just one lab and just look for one root cause. That's the first thing I would do. Luckily, we have podcasts now. If, call around locally. If you can't get the answers, most people that do what I do work remotely. Maybe one day that will change, but it's, there are wonderful virtual practitioners out there and people don't realize. That would be the first step. If someone were, when I do a discovery call with somebody, their complaints would look very different from call to call. We don't do the same thing for every person, but there are some standard labs that give us the window we need on every person, if that makes sense. So usually we're going to look at cortisol and adrenals because we want to know what the overall capacity looks like and stress load and where you're at on the spectrum. And that tells us, it informs us of what we can and can't do. Because if you're in a depleted, have been high cortisol for years, you're completely depleted. We can't go in and work on the gut stuff yet because we'll crash you worse. So we need that information to know where we're headed and what your body can handle. It also gives us hormones, so we know what all your hormones are doing. And then the GI map is a huge test that we do on just about everybody. The HTMA, the minerals test, that's foundational. So a lot of times what we'll do with people is they've had stress from 100 different areas in some shape or form, right? Some of them we can name, we know what they are. They're like husband stress, job stress, things in our life, like, for you, like bad year on the farm, maybe, there's stresses that we can name, but then there's stresses we don't know about. We don't know that our liver is stressed. We don't know that we have H. pylori or a parasite. We don't know that there's dysbiosis or our microbiome is really hurt from years of antibiotics. There's all these things that we don't know, but they're still happening and they're still contributing to the stress load, which is going to then look like all these symptoms all over the place that are different for you than they are from your neighbor. So we're basically going to look at all of it. So we're going to look at the gut. We're going to look at hormones. We're going to look at cortisol. We've got several other tests depending on the person and the budget. Sometimes we'll sort of give or take some. But for me, the GI map, the HTMA, and the cortisol testing and hormones are pretty standard. I will always do those because I think everybody needs them. On top of that, there's other ones that we can throw in there too. But those are going to allow us to get to the source of the problem and try to bring the body back to balance in a way where really my ultimate end goal is find all the dysfunction you can find. We're going to strategically, it's going to be diet and lifestyle too. It's not just labs. We're going to make changes to bring enough balance back that your body comes back in and it takes over because your body knows what it's supposed to do. We're not trying to trick it. We're not trying to cover up symptoms. We're trying to take away the burdens preventing it from doing its job. And then the beauty is it should come back in and start to take over. And a side effect of that is all of a sudden those symptoms are not as bad as they used to be, or they're gone. And people start to function better. And then they have to maintain the lifestyle stuff. So we can't forget about that part. So there's a lot of education there too, but that's basically how we approach every situation. And then there's a bunch of nuance depending on, do we think you have Lyme? Do you have a mold history? You know, there's a lot of nuance that comes in. Are you somebody that just really, really needs a lot of additional nervous system support too? Because sometimes people are like that more than other people.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's always an N of one situation, but those tools that we go in to start with are pretty much good for everybody, if that makes sense.
Yes, I love that. And it's such a total body approach.
It
And
is.
it's just, I think that's the most important thing that we can do for ourselves.
I agree. I mean, I would rather work with somebody for 4 to 8 months and never speak to them again. They don't need me again. Than work with somebody for 3 years and just do one thing at a time, you know?
Right.
And for me, that's what I was sick of too. You know, I spent years and just thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and I wasn't getting fully better. So, you know, for me, I went through it. I know how awful that felt.
Right.
I wouldn't do it that way again. I want all of it up front, and I want to figure it all out at once. And that's basically why this was such a perfect fit for me, because that was how basically I was trained to do it too. It's to look at everything.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people to go around. So I'm, you know, not worried about having to keep the same client for, you know, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Some people may need a couple years if they're complicated like I was, but
Sure.
A lot of people feel better in 4 months.
That's awesome. Well, and I feel like that's really like the best type of practitioner to go to is someone who lived it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they really understand your frustration, and they can work with you and be compassionate and empathetic, and also give you the tools, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think people don't realize, a lot of people, unfortunately, there's people practicing in the field lots of different ways. People have been burned. I was burned very badly in the past with a functional provider, but it's hard to know the difference. But I would say, you know, if you're one of these people listening that's a skeptic and that you know somebody that did something functional, or you tried something yourself, don't let that make you afraid to try again, because not everybody's the same. And there are a lot of functional people not practicing this way. It's just the same allopathic model, just with an herb instead of a drug. It's like one visit, one root cause, you're done. There's a lot of variations. That is tricky. But if you find somebody who's been there, I'm not doing this work because I have to. I have a jewelry store. You know, it's like, find somebody who's lived it. You know, if I wanted the easy path, I just would just keep on the prior life, you know.
Right. Just keep popping your medication.
Yeah. But people just, there's an attitude I see a lot where people think that functional practitioners are like out to charge them $20,000 and do nothing, which is just absolutely absurd to me, because everybody I know was sick, very, very sick, and they needed to heal themselves, or they had a child that was sick. So, you know, if you find somebody like that, their heart's going to be in the right place. And yes, the labs are expensive. Yes, it's a lot of one-on-one time. It's not going to be the same as your insurance covered visit. However, if you find somebody doing it for the right reasons with the right history, you know, you don't have to.
And you can possibly fix it in 3 months. Like,
yeah. And not everything, but a lot of times people see changes just day-to-day stuff, right? You know, where they just feel better than they did last month, and they're super excited. And that happens faster than I would even expect sometimes. You know, and we don't cure things, we don't diagnose, we don't treat, we just educate. We give you the same information that's out there you can find for yourself, a lot more streamlined, a lot easier, and we strategically help you make decisions that move you forward. So we don't claim to cure anything. We're just basically, you know, a partner to give you the information you need to get back to balance and move on with less of these complaints.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Any final words?
I don't think so. No, this has been great. Lovely conversation.
Yes. This is a lot of really great information, especially if you're just not feeling great and can't figure it out. Like, there's people out there for you, even if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune or exposed to mold or whatnot. Like, there's help out there, and I want you to know that. And I'm just finding people who I feel like have the wisdom and guidance, because sometimes all we need is a teacher to understand a little bit more about ourselves. I mean, we can't be knowledgeable about everything. That's why you hire out the things that you're not the best at.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, you could you can maybe do it yourself if you have the free time and you can read 10 books a year and, but
Yeah.
if you feel really bad, wouldn't you rather get there faster and have somebody that sees the whole picture, because that's what you pay for. It's not
exactly.
You can't figure some of this out on your own, but you will make it another. I mean, I went back to school for over a year. You will make it your life's job. You'll just go back to school without the certification at the end, and some people do, that was very similar to what I did the first time around to go into remission. I got burned by someone, didn't have any more funds, and I read books. It was a lot slower. It's now I'm like, oh man, that took a lot longer than it had to, but that was the option at the time. So the resources are out there, podcasts like yours, there are books, if you can't yet find somebody or can't afford it, find the books written by the doctors who can tell you about the issues you're dealing with.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for autoimmune books that somebody should read?
I would say for Hashimoto's, Isabella Wentz's books were really helpful for me the first time around. I'm not familiar with the more current books since then, but those were the ones that helped me. The advanced protocols that she had in her second book were the ones that really helped me navigate way back before I was a practitioner. So those are very, very helpful. And she has a lot of good online resources too. I'm sure there's some other autoimmune books out there. Amy Myers has one. I wouldn't say that everything I believe overlaps either. We probably have some areas we disagree on, but it would be a really good overview for people. But, autoimmunity is going to come down to a genetic predisposition, gut health, and a trigger. And everybody's trigger may be different. A lot of times it's environmental, some kind of a toxin, heavy metals, mold, other toxins, but there's testing for that too, but those are kind of the trifecta that occurs. For me, I know at this point, mold is a huge trigger for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Because that brought mine back. And I look back and the first time I was sick, it may have been mold then too. I was in a very moldy college and a very moldy dorm when I first got mine. So, but everybody's different and it could be more than one thing. It could be, it's the overwhelm of many sometimes.
Yep.
That would be my advice is find somebody that can really navigate it, that's been there, and or find the books. And if you find a good practitioner, they will talk to you about the books and about what was in the books. And they won't turn down your questions, where a lot of times people get their questions turned down and people, aren't always willing to take those questions. Functional practitioners typically will.
That's awesome. Yeah. And they're not gatekeeping anything.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole point of doing this for other people is we want you to know all the things we didn't know, and you can do it faster.
Yes, exactly.
You can get the information a lot faster and easier and cheaper. Like I don't charge nearly what I spent to get here. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Make sure that you check out her information and how to get a hold of her in our show notes, and I don't know, wherever they go. In the comments, however that happens, I don't know. Make sure to get a hold of her if you are having any issues or whatnot. If this inspired you, let us know in the comments. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I loved it. Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. And remember, you are never just an anything.